Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Bunkaby here on behalf of MMOBomb.com, and welcome back to the Free to Play Podcast, episode 94. Today is December 16th, 2013, and we've got such a lovely show for you today. We're talking about mods, which we actually don't talk quite a lot about when dealing with free to play games. And also, we're going to be talking about South Korea, who we all know and love for producing quite a number of very popular and iconic free-to-play MMORPGs. Apparently, though, the South Korean government isn't really taking too kindly to games anymore. And so we're going to talk about that, talk about what that may entail for us as gamers, as well as some other awesome news, as well as the weekly bombs, the bombs, A-bombs, whatever bombs you're going to give us, and the question of the week responses from you, the viewers. Now, with us, as always, is our two awesome co-hosts. We have our returning champ, Jason Winter. He's gone 9-for-0. He hasn't missed a punch. This guy is the knockout champion. Jason, how are you doing, the Stallion?
I feel pretty good, but I want to thank God for letting me get through this fight and winning
Yeah. Hold on a second while I wipe the blood from my eyes, because my face has been turned into a puffy mess.
No, I got a guy to wipe the blood from my eyes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
My cut man in the corner here.
In the other corner, though, we have Xaenex, the returning. He's like the returning new champion, or not new champion, but the returning contender, I guess you could say. I like punching my fists together, getting pumped. Xaenex, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, people.
Oh man, look how smooth he just enters the field to play. In the play field, it's like he just eases it in there. It's like a warm bath when Xaenex enters the room. Xaenex, you just slide right into that. Xaenex, good to see you, man. Glad to have you on the show. All right, so why don't we just jump right into the news then? So out the gate, we've got a little bit of news regarding South Korea, who we all know, of course, creates quite a number of free-to-play games, and just games in general. For those that don't know, South Korea, their gaming industry counts for more of the country's income than the music and film industry combined there. So it's a big deal. Of course, you have League of Legends, StarCraft 2 is major esports there, watched by thousands and millions of people within South Korea. But now South Korea government, they're looking to put into place some new restrictions on games, some new fines, and labeling them as an addictive substance akin to drugs, gambling, or even alcohol. So first of all, let's get some initial reactions on the whole labeling this as something as bad as gambling, drugs, and alcohol. No, we're not going to argue whether or not someone can or cannot get addicted to video games. There are people out there that can get addicted to anything. But I'm really sort of wondering about whether or not it would be as the same degree of labeling it as something like drugs, alcohol, or gambling. I'm not really sure if that's on the same line. And really, for gamers, I'm curious, Jason and Xaenex, whether or not you guys feel as this will have any kind of trickle-down negative impact on not only South Korean gamers, but gamers across the world. So we'll start with Xaenex. What do you feel on this, man?
I'm just confused what drove them to come to this decision in the first place, because it just seems like it came out of left field. I could understand if they were like debts amassing from maybe video game addiction, like people staying up 20, 40 hours, 60 hours, and then fall into cardiac arrest. But I haven't seen that as a common occurrence, especially for South Koreans. So I'm not too sure what drove it, but I think it's silly, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, what it is probably, it's probably not widespread, but it has happened. You mentioned a couple things in the article, and I'm hearing about some guy in an internet cafe who played League of Legends for like 30 hours straight and died because he didn't take his heart medicine or whatever. You get one or two stories like that, and that can lead to, as we see over here, whenever, to take an example, whenever there's a shooting or something like that, there'll be people coming out saying we should do this or that. I'm not going to argue, not going to get into whether that's should be done or whatever, but that sort of thing is fairly rare. But when it happens, there's a reaction of people that we should now institute new laws to deal with this, and I think it's the same kind of thing over there. It's infrequent, but that sort of thing probably makes the headlines enough that it gets that kind of reaction from mothers and families. But let's think of the children. We have to make sure that this doesn't happen and more people don't die from playing League of Legends. So that's probably where it comes from.
I like how they say think of the children, and then like the children are the ones that are like, what are you guys talking about? Like it's.
The children are like 27-year-old guys in the internet cafe. That's what that guy who
Sure.
suffered his heart attack or something like that. So
Yeah. You actually made a good point about the guns, not because, the guns are the exact same as gun violence is the same as video game addiction, but in the sense that, as a culture, American culture, guns are more prevalent than other countries, you could say, in some cases. But with South Korea, video games are hugely present in their culture. It's a very big thing and is integrated throughout. So you can definitely say that in that, widespread audience where a lot more people are gamers on average, then you could have a lot more extreme cases of things happening related to gaming because of that. And I would definitely say that would be like what you could find when you look at occurrences. Like Jason, you said, they're not very often. You have like a couple who like didn't feed their real life baby and just instead fed their online baby. And that's the thing that sounds crazy, and everything. But then you got to realize that's one occurrence out of how many millions of people play video games on a daily basis. And some people will admit to playing too much or what have you, but those certainly aren't, a justification for labeling it as a whole as a bad thing. It's funny because in the article, this was actually talked about on The Guardian, which is a very prominent, political as well as other news outlet on the web. But The Guardian talked about the fact that they're like gamer or video game designers or developers as a whole. You can't label them as drug makers. Would you label a video game maker as a drug maker? It doesn't. It seems ridiculous about that. And yet, they want to put into place this bill, which will basically the bill that they want to introduce will tax or put a sort of income something on it of 1% of the industry's revenue to create a fund to curb addiction. So it doesn't say 1% from each company. It says 1% of the gaming industry's revenue in the country. And then conservative politicians also think that they should have a separate bill which would limit advertising. So you have these two separate things. But, you may think 1% of the gaming industry's revenue, it's not too bad, if you want to make a little bit more awareness about video game addiction, what have you. But then you got to realize that when it breaks down per company, you have these smaller developers here who may actually end up incurring, higher fees perhaps, or, it may actually cut out those budding developers. I can't imagine, in the U.S. or other countries if someone's trying to make a game on their own or with a small team, and now they have to pay this extra fee because it's just that they're making a video game, It could, when you're dealing with such a small budget and small team, every penny counts, every dollar counts. And I definitely could see this, if not hurting the big guys, certainly hampering the little guys, and maybe overall ending in like less games shown throughout the world from Korea. That's of course worst case scenario, and that's speculation. But you could see things heading down that road if this gets introduced and it gets support not only from South Korea but maybe even from other governments. Do you guys worry at all as that maybe being something that could happen?
I worry less about, I guess, the financial implication of it from the direct financial implication of 1%. Even for a smaller company, it's probably not huge. It's sort of thing you can kind of work around, I think. Mm-hmm. To me, it would be more of the social stigma associated with it if you do classify a video game as a drug. Because then you do have the parents not wanting. I mean, it's enough they don't want to buy, Grand Theft Auto for their kids, which, all right, fine, something like that, R-rated, slapping down hookers and whatever. Sure, I get that, but can they not buy, Super Mario Brothers? Are they going to look at that and say, oh, well, this is a warning label. I say it's an addictive substance. I don't want to get this for my kid. That's what I worry about more so, and that's where I think you could have the real financial effect of having video games getting knocked down like that. The one thing it reminds me of is almost like the comics code that the comic books had starting in the 50s to make sure they weren't, obscene or needlessly violent or whatever. And that really damaged the comics industry, and it took them decades really to work their way through that to the point now where you don't have the comics code anymore. You can do whatever you want. It's a lot more free. But that is the sort of situation where the moral high ground, the moral majority or whatever, got their fingers into that industry and really just kicked it around for several decades.
Yeah, exactly. Xaenex, what about you? I know you play a lot of foreign MMOs. Do you feel as though this would directly affect the games that you would have access to, or do you feel as though this may have, like Jason was saying, longer implications in terms of, you know, less developers willing to make games in South Korea due to the fact that there may be a stigma attached to it.
Yeah, I think it's more so about the long-term effect because like it's one thing to say like it's a huge thing to say video games are an addictive substance because now we're not just talking MMOs, we're talking like single player games. We're talking even like leapfrog games for little children. We're talking like Pac-Man, you know, like video games as a whole. Like if they're trying to say that's the statement, like it just seems silly. Like I've never like imagined anyone really becoming addicted to like Pac-Man or like a society as a whole basically even becoming addicted to Pac-Man. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, see how that plays out there. I do sort of worry because South Korea is viewed as this like really integrated technological you know, culture that's integrated with video games, that other you know, lawmakers in other countries, you know, especially conservative countries, will look at those as guidelines maybe for things that they can put in place to limit, you know, the exposure of things that they feel are unnecessary for youth or what have you. It may not necessarily be because it's an addiction. It may be another reason they implement it, but they could still view it as like, you know, a motivator for them to look into that. So those are the kind of things that we have to, as journalists or as individuals, you know, working with the gaming industry, you know, keep an eye on, because that could definitely impact us in the future.
I just have a hard time thinking this would actually come to pass in the United States, though, because of, I think, the better awareness we have of, and the fact that we kind of been through video games are bad for the children. We've been kind of through that before, and the fact that we have, you know, like the EFF and organizations like that to you know, better protect our industry.
Yeah, I would have to agree, but it just makes me curious. It just makes me curious as to why South Korea would be doing this, when the exact same groups of individuals are also, you know, is this basically South Korea's display of what we had in the past, and South Korea is just choosing to make a different decision on it? Like, that could be possibly what we're witnessing here, Jason. Now that you mentioned it, you know, you mentioned we had this in the past, and this could be their version of that, but they're choosing to, instead of just say no, it's not actually as bad as you say it is, they're saying, well, maybe it is, and we should do these sort of laws and put those in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But now that we're a global society that interacts with people all over, everything could still wash over to us, even if we're thousands of miles away, and impact what games we play. So definitely isn't a positive thing overall. It never really seems like a positive outcome to that situation. Hopefully that changes soon and that'll just go away. All right, so moving on, we have some news regarding Monster Madness Online, a new cooperative shooter released by Trendy Entertainment. They revealed it released a open alpha state, which was really surprising. You wouldn't expect a company as large or well known as Trendy Entertainment to release a game in an alpha state openly, and, you know, and say, invite players to come in, you know, without some kind of key system. But yeah, they did that. It's free to play. I actually have a first look of it up on the YouTube channel, MMOBomb.com, or youtube.com/freemmogamer is the YouTube channel, and then MMOBomb.com is where you can find the actual post for it. But yeah, of course, Trendy Entertainment is the developers of Dungeon Defenders, and this game is sort of interesting in that it combines a lot of customization elements. I mean, there is a ton of customization. Hardcore permadeath is in the game. Over 70 monster types to fight against as a shooter. It's cross-platform for iOS, web, Chrome, not Internet Explorer, PC. I had to put that in there.
Screw Internet Explorer.
Yeah, I actually have to say each browser it's for, because people will think that it's for every browser when I say web, but it's for a specific browser. You can download it on PC, Mac, and Linux as well. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in it. But then on this flip side of the game, it seems very not social, but softcore. I mean, like
casual.
Casual, yeah. There's the word I was looking for. Very casual in the sense that it supposedly is going to be a campaign cooperative shooter where players can group up in groups of 4 to take on an alien invasion force, which for some reason happens to have zombies, werewolves, and other like fantasy-based creatures like gargoyles, but they're aliens. So I guess they had to figure out how to do 70 different monster types somehow. But yeah, I have to give them kudos for opening the game up in alpha state, and I'm kind of wondering, you guys, like, if you think that was like a wise move for them to do, especially with how like ambitious they're trying to be with this game. Usually I find that when people say that their game's going to be very ambitious and then they show it off and it is very sort of like just a slice of that, people will make their opinions way too quickly. So I'm kind of curious if Jason, if Xaenex or you think that a game like this will actually pan out, do well from going from alpha forward, or if they made a mistake from releasing it so early.
That's always difficult because it depends on some alphas are better than others. They're not all created equal, and depending on how much stuff they have going into it and how many different elements are, basically how much there is to break. It can work out. Now, if you're just looking at the video that I saw on the site, I haven't looked at your first look yet, but just looking at that, you can. It seems like it's not that hard to make. Hey, let's get 4 people together and blow the hell out of some zombies for a couple hours. So it gets people into the basic gameplay, I guess. And especially if it's not that complex a thing, if they're going to add more later. You do wonder, of course, like you said before a little bit, is it going to appear to be a little shallow? Is it going to seem to be a little too simple because, A, it is kind of simple, to start with. It's not, not meant for hardcore shooter fans. And B, because they don't have a whole lot of features in there because it's still alpha. So you can worry a little bit about people getting burned out really early, too.
Yeah, the game currently only has 2 modes. I mean, it is alpha, and I guess the alpha would be more of a demo, if anything. You get to try out 1 level of a survival mode, and then you get to try out 1 map of the 16-player battleground, which is the PvP, which is said to be able to have different modes eventually, vehicles, turrets, a lot of different elements for you to engage in. But I'm kind of worried that, and Xaenex, I'm going to ask you, I'm kind of worried. They wanted to make it cross-platform, so it's available on all these different platforms that you play at the same time. Do you think making a game available on iOS, Android, basically tablets, while also making it on the PC, do you think that really sort of dilutes the quality of the game, the end result, essentially?
Definitely. Especially if you're basically going to be on a tablet versus someone that's on a PC. How are you going to have an even playing field? You don't have the ease of control as you do on PC. So having this on cross-platform, I don't see that as a good option. My other thing is with this game, I feel like when companies are saying oh, my game is going to be an open alpha, I feel like, A, that just disrespects your game, and it just is a really bad light. I hate when companies do that because it's do you not have internal testing? Do you not have a QA team? And if that's the issue, then say it's a demo. When you said it earlier, I was man, it sounds so much better when they're saying it's a demo, because essentially that is what it is, than saying, oh, I want you guys to open alpha test this game. It's just, it doesn't sound right.
The difference is you can't charge someone for a demo.
That's true. But this is open alpha. They didn't make anybody. Kudos to Trendy. They didn't charge anyone for this, but
there's no fee. Okay, well that's
no fee.
Yeah.
It's open.
That's unusual. I gotta say.
That's what threw me for a loop. It wasn't that they just made it an alpha and people can buy into the alpha now. It's that they made an open alpha that anybody could join. It's so early in development. Obviously, I mean, it was pretty obvious when I jumped in that there's just a lot of things missing, and they talk a lot about what they're going to add in the future, and they'll have all these different permadeath system and crafting and these custom classes built into items where you can have different abilities that you fuse with items and then use those items on any character you want, effectively making your own style of play and the weapons and what have you. And I saw some of the early aspects of that, but as a whole it just looked very shallow, and for me, I'm a big shooter fan, and it really irritated me that there was no real sense of if I can shoot them wherever, basically. I can shoot them in the face, I can shoot them in the body. It didn't matter where I shoot them, as long as I shot at them and it hit them, I could kill them, essentially, right? There was no feedback to it. It just felt like I was shooting at a never-ending body of zombies,
Was there no recoil as well?
There was no recoil, none of that stuff. So it's just it's a very arcade, very sort of it's something that you play in a browser, you know, like not very.
But hey, it's open alpha.
Yeah, exactly. It's open alpha, so I think part of that.
But this gets to what you were talking about before, where are you making an early judgment on the game? So you know.
I see.
But that's what they do though. Like
I know.
That's what it's basically what you're begging for. Like, don't put it out there for the public, especially today's public. It's not like when we were back in the early 2000s, maybe like 2002, where people really knew what an alpha was supposed to be for and had that mindset. Even nowadays, I'm kind of like caught off guard in betas where I'm like, oh, I really should be testing this game, shouldn't I?
I was going to say, nobody knew what an alpha was for in 2002 because nobody got into an alpha. You might get into a beta. But now, what's the difference these days between an alpha and a beta?
Less features. That's the difference.
Well, you're always adding features, though. So
I think alpha is defined as like the core features aren't all there. Like some of them core features are there, and then beta is like all the core features are there, but like the smaller features haven't been.
Yeah, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I
feel like gamma.
Gamma. Something in between it.
Yeah, I just think it's a really bad look. At least that's just my personal opinion, though.
And I wasn't trying to make an early judgment per se. I was just saying what threw me off was the fact that the combat. I felt as though it was a design choice on purpose because of the fact that the game was going to be on tablets and iOS devices and such. Where that they were going to have to, because you can play the game in first person or third person or top down. You can rotate the camera up to the point where it goes top down. And so in top down, you cannot aim at their bodies. You just aim at them.
Yeah, you aim in that direction.
You aim in the direction, which is why I feel they didn't add anything like headshots and body shots and blah blah blah. Because no matter what direction you were facing, you had to just be able to shoot straight and hit the target in order to kill it, because it had to work like that for the mobile devices essentially, which really to me dilutes the gameplay quality.
Yeah, I would question what they're even aiming for then, because I feel like, especially in shooters, I've seen top down shooters, but then they employ stealth mechanics like hiding behind certain walls, or they really are turned into, I guess, like platformers or just stages where you can really utilize the environment, where in this it just sounds like you just shoot in direction and dead.
That being said, they're doing a lot with the whole crafting and making your own items and what have you, and they also are going to feature mod support where players can actually, I think this is probably the best feature that they've promised, although we haven't seen it yet. Of course, it's alpha, not everything's there, but they're promising Steamworks compatibility, whereby you can create your own local hosted server, either if online or locally with other computers, and then play with your friends, in your own private server, and actually make your own mods, make your own items, your own mods, and then put those on your own servers and play them with friends as well. So I think that's one thing that Trendy did with original Dungeon Defenders, and I think that's really huge for them to do that with another free-to-play game, because free-to-play games are all about making money off of the person by them buying stuff that they can only get by playing the game online. And now you're introducing the ability to play the game offline with friends on your own servers, where you maybe not necessarily have to buy anything. Who knows, maybe they can mod it to where you actually had all the items unlocked or what have you. We're not really sure what Trendy might do, but I thought that was a pretty bold step for Trendy, and I hope other developers take that same sort of like leeway. We've seen that from Trendy, we see that kind of from Valve with some of their games as well, the Team Fortress 2 to some extent, as well as Dota. But I'm gonna say props to Trendy in that respect. I'm a little still optimistic about the game itself. What were you saying, Xaenex?
No, I said I agree. I do. I like to see that.
All right, well, guys, go ahead and check it out on YouTube if you want to see the first impressions of it. Like I said before, it is currently playable. You can just go ahead and go to monstermadness.com, sign up for the alpha. The beta, I believe, will be closed, and you'll have to actually get a key. That's what it looks like. So it looks like they'll have a limited alpha, and then it'll go back into a closed beta state, whereby people will have to apply to actually get in, which is kind of funny. It's like open alpha, weird. Closed beta.
That's so weird.
I know. It's like it's open. Then usually you have worse server infrastructure in alpha than you do in beta, which I don't understand why they would want to limit it. All right, whatever. Going ahead And moving on, I cannot speak for some reason. We're going to keep talking about mods. Talking about a specific modder, who created an unofficial Tribes Ascend SDK. So, a modder on Reddit named Altimore. For those that don't know, there is a pretty dedicated following of Tribes Ascend. Despite Hi-Rez's attempt to just ditch it by the wayside, there is still a core group of players who play it pretty competitively. And after Hi-Rez stated that, first they stated that they were going to make a SDK or try to make an SDK, and then they said, no, we can't make an SDK. It's too expensive. We don't have manpower. Then apparently this Reddit user made his own using a leaked dev build. And for those that don't know what an SDK is, essentially an SDK allows you to modify the core game, make your own server, make your own rules. You know, in this case, it would allow them to play Hi-Rez's Tribes Ascend on their own private servers, separate from Tribes' official servers, and play with everything unlocked, which meant that no grinding, none of that stuff had to be re-unlocked. You could just automatically have it, and that's pretty huge for this game. Like that's a huge development, because that could revitalize a large portion of the community who may have left for either balance decisions or the fact that they kept introducing more grind items or what have you. But I kind of wanted to get the reaction from you, Xaenex, and you, Jason. First of all, the fact that this was done sort of like pseudo, not illegally, I will say, but not without express permission from Hi-Rez. So I wanted to get what you thought Hi-Rez might react to that, because so far they have not reacted to it. But also just what you think of the overall development of the story.
First, I want to say praise the tribe's gods. This is what I've wanted for like the past decade. A lot of people don't know about the first Tribes, and I was one of the players back way back then. And I just remember so many memories. And to me, there was just no shooter. It was just like, what is this game? I could use a jetpack and fly around. There were actual vehicles that you can maneuver before Halo. It was just that epic experience. And when I read this, I wanted to scream with joy. This is really exciting for me personally, because as a Tribes fan, I really look forward to an experience similar to the first Tribes. And when I played Tribes Ascend, I was really disappointed to see even though there were a lot of Tribes dedicate stuff that I got accustomed to in the old days, there was still a lot of new, and I didn't like how they did the weapons. I didn't like how they did the cash shop and so on and so forth. Just many different details about Tribes Ascend that turned me away from the game. And so with this, if this does go forward, I definitely look forward to the days of old. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Of old. They could actually balance it more towards what it was in Tribes 1, Tribes 2. They would have that ability to balance the weapons like that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's incredible, because even back then you had to have a good internet connection, and we're talking dial-up days. You had to have a good connection to host your own server and have the ping. But now that's not an issue. It's just a really good experience for a new generation.
Jason, do you think Hi-Rez will actually can Hi-Rez even do anything at this point if they wanted to?
I imagine they do. I mean, it's their property, and like I said, unless it's something I haven't read the whole EULA, so I don't know exactly what's allowed and not. But if you got what did you say it was?
He got a leaked dev build. He got a leaked dev build of the client, which allowed him to reverse engineer it essentially to create an SDK.
You're right. It does sound shady and on the borderline of illegal. Maybe it actually is illegal on some level, but I mean, for one thing, yeah, they probably could go after him if they wanted to and have a pretty good case.
But what would be the backlash?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Should they? But not only, the backlash certainly would be one part of it, but then there's also just the fact of what are they doing with Tribes?
Exactly.
Now the thing is, though, this even if they're not really doing anything with it, if they're just sitting on it, they do still have the right to keep it around. Take a great example is that one guy who was making that World of StarCraft thing. Now, granted, StarCraft was still active, but he had to have a chat with Blizzard to make sure that everything that's going on there was legal. Even if Tribes doesn't exist, or if no one's making it, someone owns the copyright to it. So making your own version of whatever it is still potentially the sort of thing that could infringe on future profits or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a copyright lawyer, but yeah, I mean,
Well,
They probably shouldn't. I mean, they should and they shouldn't.
well,
It's
I mean, you got to also remember, didn't Hi-Rez already state that they in the future was going to make a Tribes Ascend 2? They basically stated that they were like more likely to make a Tribes Ascend 2 than they were to go back to Tribes
right.
and like add new content. And they said they would do that maybe after like Global Agenda 2. So they could, even if they're like, okay, they're not going to do anything with Tribes Ascend, what's the harm of him getting an SDK? Tribes, Hi-Rez could be thinking like 5-6 years down the line, or maybe even just 4, given Hi-Rez's track record for how quickly they put out games. In the respect that in 4 or 5 years, if they put out Tribes Ascend 2 and they have this SDK here for Tribes Ascend, the original, and that one's still proving to be popular among the Tribes Ascend niche or fan group, they could lose out on that revenue because the fan group remembers what the original Tribes Ascend, what happened to it, what Hi-Rez did to it.
I mean, maybe you come to an agreement with the guy and just say, all right, you can run your thing for whatever 4 or 5 years until we make Tribes Ascend 2. Then we're gonna have to shut you down or something.
We reached out to Hi-Rez, asked them for an official comment about this, and then they didn't respond. And they did in the past when we asked about the EULA and them breaking it. They did respond to that. So I'm curious why they're being so tight-lipped, because I think some other outlets have asked them as well. We'll see.
They probably are waiting to form their response, talking to their lawyers, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure, exactly. Well, I, for one, welcome it. I was a decent Tribes 2 fan. I played Tribes 2 a little bit. And I never really got into Tribes Ascend. It just never really clicked with me. It wasn't. Yeah. I think I moved past the days of skiing. Like it wasn't my type of shooter anymore. But definitely happy to see more mod support. And I think mod support should really we should see a rise in mod support in free-to-play games. Like I really think, especially with like Valve and what they did with Team Fortress 2, where you can make your own gameplay modes within Team Fortress 2 for it and host your own private servers for the free-to-play game. I think, seeing more of that type of content, seeing more of that type of customization added to games that are free-to-play would really extend the life of free-to-play games, because then players could create their own content, not only just using the tools that are provided through like Neverwinter, for example, with their Foundry system, but actual, custom maps and custom assets, etc. Because that just, it's fun to play online and fun to play the official stuff, but playing the unofficial stuff is what really keeps you going back to the game. And so when official stuff comes out, you're like, oh, hey, something actually official. And then, you're just as excited to go play it because you just haven't been burning yourself out on just official content.
Yeah, but if this basically replaces the old, Tribes Ascend, for instance.
Oh, yeah. In this case, I was talking about mods as a whole for free-to-play.
Sure.
Yeah.
In this case, this would replace it. But keep in mind, Hi-Rez already offered the $30 Game of the Year edition, which gave you everything now and future. They've already done that also with Smite. So maybe Hi-Rez was already writing it off and saying, well, anything we get from now on is just, gravy or whatever. So who knows? We'll see exactly what Hi-Rez chooses to do. But in the meantime, we'll be keeping our eye on how that develops. Now, we're going to go ahead and then move on to the weekly bombs here. And I will, of course, start. To begin with, I'm going to give an A-bomb to Skype for causing huge issues with their recording software last week and this week. The whole reason we're recording on Monday is because of Skype. So for those that don't know, we use a software called CallBurner, and up until recently, it worked fine with Skype, but then Skype decided to be just a huge dick one day and not work with CallBurner. Like, they literally changed how they function with outside software, so that now when I try to use the software, everybody shows up like robots, and you don't even hear me. So now, though, we got a new setup. We're doing fine. We're back in. Hopefully the audio is just as good, if not better. And, yeah, screw Skype. Although we still have to use it to talk to each other. Ugh. I hate monopolies. Anyways, Jason, what's your A-bomb to bomb this week?
I've got a da-bomb to my World of Warplanes experience from Saturday night. So this is going to be, a boring case of a guy telling you about a cool thing he did in a video game, but you're all just going to have to listen to it.
Tell us, Grandpa Jason.
So, yeah, this is actually during my stream, which you should watch. You should watch my streams.
Okay.
But I was playing on Saturday night, getting some World of Warplanes in. And one of the planes I had was just this unmaneuverable as heck thing. It was a tier 2 Russian plane. It can't dogfight worth a crap. So as I'm talking with my chat room, I'm trying to figure out what the strategy is for this thing, because you can't. I can't go around and circle around you guys and do flips and whatever. So eventually they're like, well, stay up high and just kind of occasionally poke your nose down to shoot at guys and just keep going around. So I do that a little bit, and eventually I get someone on my tail, and I can't shake him because this thing is a beast. Got a lot of hit points though. So I'm just about gonna get shot down, I figure. He moves so much faster than me that he actually catches up to me, rams into me from either from behind or from below. I couldn't tell which, and he gets knocked out. But my plane is still fine. I still had like 30% of my hit points left. So that was when I realized that was a strategy for that plane. It's like occasionally I'll shoot at stuff, but I'll also ram you if I get the chance. I did that again later that night. Just went head on with this one guy, knocked him out, had like 17 hit points left on my plane, and survived the fight. So
you just put shades on. You're like, deal with it.
Yeah,
just keep going. Like,
yeah. Just boom.
Not a care in the world. Just keep going.
Don't mess with. Yeah, let's go head on. Head on with me, buddy.
I have to ask, why were you playing World of Warplanes and not War Thunder?
Because I feel like I gotta give them both some time to make sure I give a proper idea of each.
True. That actually gives me an idea for an article you can write coming up then.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
Yeah, I knew you were. Xaenex, what is going to be your A-bomb, da-bomb this week?
I'd like to give a da-bomb to Area Games and Our Kingdom. So today the Founders Beta launched, and at first I was going to be like, A-bomb, they only opened up 2 channels, but within like half an hour, everything was running smooth. There's literally hundreds of players on, so that's just tons of money.
I would
right
argue
there.
thousands.
Yeah, I would imagine thousands, to be honest with you. And yeah, it's just an awesome experience.
Yeah, I happened to be there as well as Xaenex, and I was lagging pretty hardcore at one point. I was actually surprised because you have to pay quite a lot to get into a Founders Beta. $200 to get into the Founder Beta, and there were
20.
There were so many people. What'd you say?
It's $20 minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably 200.
You said 200.
Package.
Oh, I thought.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. For some reason, I thought you had to pay for like at least like $100 package or something to get into the Founders one. But yeah, $20 minimum or whatever. $20 up to $200, and there was quite a lot of people who had that $200 pack. I noticed quite a few people running around with those items in the game. So a lot of people definitely pumped for Our Kingdoms. You guys are already going to see the first look. It's going to be up by the time this is already up. So definitely go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. See whether or not that is going to be an MMO for you. Whether or not you like anime MMOs or not, I guess you could say. Xaenex, apparently you really do. So kudos for you.
That's why we keep him around. He's just the anime MMO
He's
guy.
the anime MMO guy. It's like that's just what he does. That's his thing. All right, member bombs. This week we've got Shasao, who says, "Da bomb to the Elder Scrolls Online for inviting me to the beta and giving me something fun to do over the weekend. But also a bomb to the Elder Scrolls Online for sticking with their subscription model."
Shasa, we won't tell anybody because I don't think you're supposed to say that you were in the Elder Scrolls Online beta.
Is it just me, or is that really dumb? Like that you can't say you're in a beta. Like,
I think I even wrote an article about that a few weeks ago. But yeah, it is pretty dumb.
That's like the weirdest form of restriction.
Guys, it's the internet. People are going to talk about stuff.
I know. I would say I would give a bomb to Elder Scrolls Online for plastering my email all over the screen and making it really hard to play.
Well, that's so you can't. That's so if you if you do a screenshot and post it online, they know where it's from.
I know.
Yeah. Because they had a little bit of a leak around the start of the year, so.
It's too bad they just didn't have some kind of system in place where if you tried to take a screenshot or video, it would show up. But only then, not when you're actually playing and trying to actually experience what it's supposed to be like.
But then you could bypass that.
Really?
With an outside program, like Push.
Yeah, I've taken screenshots of betas where they don't have the screenshot button enabled with what's it called? Fraps.
Yeah. Just many other programs.
Interesting. Xaenex, why don't you go ahead and do this next? Actually, Jason.
Jason. I should probably read the next one.
Probably read the next one, yeah.
It's from Thundergrave, and he says, "Jason, double the bomb. That was a fantastic accent," referring, of course, to my lovely British accent from a few weeks ago from MMOBomb that I read. Thank you, Thundergrave. Hip hip. Thank you, Thundergrave, and I do hope you enjoyed it. I wish I knew if he was British or not, because I'd like to actually.
He said he wasn't. He said he wasn't British.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'd like to know how the real speakers thought of me.
Well, hopefully someone that actually speaks. I almost said actually speaks
Speaks
British.
English.
I almost said I almost said someone who speaks British, someone who is British or who is English rather.
I do not, however, I do not pronounce my U's though in words like color and armor. Sorry.
Color. I don't know.
Hello.
Probably sound terrible. We sound terribly, terribly brutish.
But I can't say aluminium, even though I hate it.
Oh. So the question of the last week then, question of the week for the viewers last week. There we go. Was, do you prefer large updates which take a while to come out, or small updates which happen frequently but with less content in each? Big or small? What do you like? Some guy who loves Kevin's voice had this to say: I like the bigger updates, mostly because the smaller ones tend to only fix stuff and add items and such. The bigger updates and the ones that usually give us more content to play through, more places to visit, or new maps and game modes, and so on. And I tend to run from one MMO to another, and when a big update comes, I tend to go back and check it out. The bigger updates are the ones that bring me back into a game, and that may have many more hours of fun. So certainly big updates draw the bigger, the bigger eyeballs turn to it. I don't know why bigger eyeballs, but you draw more eyes, not bigger
More
eyes.
eyeballs,
More
yeah.
eyeballs, not bigger ones. Bigger updates, bigger eyes. Smaller updates, smaller eyes. Jason, why don't you go ahead and take this second one then?
All right, this one is from, I guess, Altai Jr. It's kind of how it looks like, or Altair or something. Anyway. It says, currently, due to practical reasons, I prefer major content updates on a slower yet on a regular basis. That is, within a few months and not an entire year. Otherwise, when time is not a shortage and I am really into a game, I would choose minor content updates, released within a relatively short intervals in time instead. I guess that makes sense, because if you don't have a whole lot of time, if you only got a job that takes up a lot of your time, you want to be able to reserve, like, I'm going to really play like crazy this weekend, but you're going to do that like once a month or so. So you'd rather have the fewer updates so that you're not missing out on stuff on those weeks when you can't play.
Yeah, I tend to find, like, with bigger updates, I kind of get overwhelmed, especially if I'm really busy, because I want to experience it, but then I don't have time, and then I feel like it's not that I can't come back to the content. It's that all my friends are going to get through it quicker than I am, and that's a lot more content for me to catch up on than my friends. That's how I've viewed it in the past. Sometimes big updates are good. Sometimes small ones are better, just depending on your time frame. Definitely, I definitely agree. I'll tell you. All right, Xaenex, why don't you go ahead and take this last individual here?
This one is from Catalan. He says, or they say, I'll give the Marvel Heroes MMO as an example. They update the game each week with a small patch, and they add new heroes every month. After each update, I usually play a bit and check out the changes, but then I stop and only do the dailies until the next content patch. Now, with content that takes months to develop and launch, like World of Warcraft patches, the added content takes way longer for players to complete raids, rep grinds, new patterns to discover, etc. Ideally, I'd want big patches each month, but that's impossible.
Never say something's impossible.
Exactly. Look at Guild Wars 2. Cough, cough.
The game has huge patches every month.
Yeah. Every 2 weeks.
I'd say reasonably sized, not necessarily
Reasonably sized.
We're saying
but
big,
every month.
we're saying big patches. You're talking like World of Warcraft 5.4 or something like that. Introducing a new raid and everything.
Well, those are massive, because not only do they update everything at once. They update the PvE, the PvP. They balance everything in one fell like swoop.
And I think it's nice for him to say that, but I don't think you'd want a patch like that every month.
No,
that's a little bit too much.
No.
The quality would most likely diminish, unless
even
you
if the
had
quality,
such a huge...
was perfect, even if it was perfect, but that would just be too much to absorb, I think.
Yeah,
and
you
would
wouldn't be able to go through
convoluted.
it. Yeah. The storyline probably wouldn't work very well, because you're like, wait, I just went through 3 other main people in like the last 2 months. Now there's this 4th guy.
Or maybe I didn't get to play like much this month, and I missed the entire storyline because now it's gone and it's progressed.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, going to go ahead and bring us to this week's question of the week. This week's question of the week is hardcore role-playing dead in MMOs? I mean, we had the recent Everjane that was fully funded, which I cannot believe. Apparently, pigs do fly somewhere in this world.
You've got to stop hating on that. It's gonna be
I'm
the
not
best
hating
game
it.
ever.
I can't. It's too fun. It's too fun. Like, okay, so Everjane, you're a nice MMO. You got your niche there. It's just you're silly. You're silly. I can't help it. It's just so silly when I look at
It's
you.
so serious. You got to be so serious in that game. So that hardcore role playing is dead because you would not role play in Everjane. You'd just be a troll. You'd be going.
I would run around naked
taking
in
off
the
your
streets.
pants. Yeah, exactly.
I would die of starvation in 3 months because I wouldn't find a job in that game. That's how it works as a free-to-play player. But yeah, certainly. Is hardcore role-playing dead? We haven't really seen... I mean, I remember when WoW servers had some pretty hardcore role-playing servers, but that was in the early days. I haven't really seen that even nowadays, and especially with MMOs becoming more mainstream, a lot of people not doing LARPing online anymore. I guess this is role-playing. LARPing is doing it in real life. I haven't really seen a huge audience for it. Have you guys?
I did in SWTOR, Star Wars: The Old Republic, but since then I have not seen it, and I've actually looked.
Jason, do you know of any?
Role players are weird.
No, we're not.
They're just weird.
Hurtful.
Yeah.
No,
I'm bigoted.
It's
I'm
only those
definitely
LARPer guys. It's only those guys that actually go outside.
LARPing is awesome, okay?
Xaenex is like, I do all of this.
Wow.
Xaenex, I'm sorry. I'll go watch you. I'll cheer you on one day. I'll be in the stand. I'm like, go Xaenex, go. Get him. Fake swords, yeah. All right, so yeah, is hardcore role-playing dead at MMOs, guys? Or if you happen to hardcore role-play yourself, feel free to respond to us. In fact, respond to us in your character. Show us what hardcore role-playing...
Yes, responses must be in character.
They must be in character. Tell us
There
in
you
your
go.
MMO's character why hardcore role-playing is not dead. And if it is dead, and you don't actually role-play, still try to role-play is something. Make something up.
There you go.
There you go. All right, guys. That's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Of course, this is the point where we tell you where you can follow us. I myself am always catchable or findable or encounterable or whatever other word you want to actually use to mean me and you meeting somewhere on the internet. On Twitter, it's at Spunkify, SPUNKIFY. And then, of course, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on twitch.tv/MMOBomb is where I stream different various games. This week it'll be Aura Kingdom, but that will have already passed by the time you guys watch this. So, too bad. It'll be on the internet at some point. All right, why don't we go ahead then and move over to Xaenex.
You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/XaenexTV. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Xaenex, and you can find my editorials, weekly editorials at freetoplay.tv.
All right, and then Jason, as always, you've got, of course, a live stream that you talked about. What is that live stream?
I stream at twitch.tv/JasonWinter. Very difficult to remember. Also on Twitter at Winter Informal. Just blanked out for a minute there. And occasionally I will blog at jasonwinter.wordpress.com.
Where does your mind go when it blanks out?
Cleveland.
Cleveland, Ohio?
Yes.
Or that show on Fox?
Show?
Oh.
I made a really obscure reference to a show I don't even watch. Just because it was also named Cleveland and I couldn't think of anything else named Cleveland at the second. Alright, well that's going to wrap up our quota for awkward endings on this week's episode of MMO.
Gotta have one every week.
Free to play. Gotta have one every week. Free to play podcast. Until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. And we'll see you guys later. Smokify out. Later, guys.